And welcome back. Now, the South African taxpayer has been dealt another blow, suffering an increase of 27 billion rand in irregular expenditure by state-owned companies in the 2017-2018 financial year. Now, of the 434 departments and entities audited, only 99 received clean audits, which is a worse outcome than last year. And this was revealed by South Africa's Auditor General Kimi Makwetu when he briefed Parliament on Wednesday. Now, the AG told the committee that companies such as Denel, SA Express and others are still to be audited, which could see further ballooning in the monies wasted by government entities. And we're joined now by Ayanda Dlodlo, and she is Public Services and Administration Minister. Thanks so much for coming through, Minister.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, looking at this, irregular spending seems to continue unabated. What's your immediate response to that report?
That something needs to be done. Between the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Public Service and Administration, we need to sit and do something about this. Because, for starters, if it looks the way that it does, it regresses rather than improves, it means there's a lapse in the system. And the lapse could be as a result of many things. It could be because people are not adequately trained. It could be because of our recruitment systems. It could be our inability to put in place a very tight performance management system followed with consequences for ill behavior or even non-adherence and non-compliance to policy prescripts. So I think between the Minister of Finance and myself, we need to sit and work on a performance management system that cuts across the board. Not just one that is developed by me, because as you can see, if it is just the DPSA, there are many other issues that come into the fore, and this is a result of it.
Certainly, but looking at the mandate of your department, this is something that you have to be seized with. And when it looks as though it is just continuing unabated, and given the reasons that you've just listed, which all sound plausible, the question is, though, how do you arrest it? Where does it stop? Because speaking to the Auditor General last year, he said he feels like he's wrestling a pig in the mud, because he doesn't seem to be getting anywhere. Every year, even this year, even though it's a marginal increase of 1%, 1% adds up to, a couple of 100 million
it's
in the end.
It's 1% too much, taking into account the fact of the matter is that this fiscus is not growing. The public purse is not growing. If anything, it's declining. So 1% is a lot of money. 1% is a fine line between the collapse of government and blowing up on the aspirations and hopes of our people. What we need to be doing is tightening our reporting systems, our accountability systems, which I think to some degree, Alex, this is why you find this. Because if we took sterner action against individuals, as per our accountability framework and also the Public Finance Management Act, we wouldn't be seeing an increase in fruitless and wasteful expenditure.
So why isn't that
irregular
happening?
Expenditure. Well, this is what we're working on now. I mean, I'm new in the job. We're looking at all sorts of things, including those areas that make it easy for such things to happen, that make it easy for these lapses in government to occur. So it's not as if we're not doing anything, Sakina, right now. I've just called the DG as well to say we are supposed to be developing determinations on expenditure revenue. And this is not what we have done between us and the Ministry of Finance. So a new minister in place, the first part of call would be a meeting between the two of us to really look at the systems that make it easy for these things to happen, but also looking at our consequence management system as well,
now,
in general.
And you see, Minister, this is problematic because as the public, we are not privy to this. We just continue to be dumbstruck year after year when the Auditor General releases his report. As the government, you seem overwhelmed every other year when the Auditor General releases his report. So what exactly are we not privy to in terms of what you are doing in order to stem this tide?
But you must also understand that irregular expenditure is not always as a result of a bad transgression. It could be because there were other pressing issues and priorities that came to the fore based on whatever environmental, whatever comes out in the environment.
But that would be, it would have to be many of those, 27 billion?
Well, I'm not justifying the 50 billion. I'm trying to explain the irregular expenditure thing, because you can still go back to Parliament and have it regularized. So it's not as if it's corruption or anything to that effect, but it is irregular. And that irregular can be dealt with, both from a condonation perspective, but also from a perspective of ensuring that if it is an issue of aptitude or attitude, then we need to deal with it decisively.
Which is a critical question.
From a performance management perspective and a disciplinary perspective.
And that is a critical question. Yeah. Is it attitude or aptitude? Yeah. Because if this points to simply poor planning, people being inept at their jobs, then that is a huge problem.
Well, we're trying to streamline our planning systems. As you would know, there's 2 departments now that are responsible for planning. It is the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. We also have, as per the Public Service Act, a responsibility on the strategic planning processes, and at provincial level, but also at national government level, to determine how that process unfolds. I mean, in the past you would have, and this is what we discussed in the last cabinet, in the past you would have Geraldine Moleketi-Fraser when she was minister, you would have the Minister of Finance, you would have Job Mogoro when he was still the head of SAMDI, you would have us all, you would have national government descending on provinces to assist in the makhutla that determined the strategic plans of provinces. That no longer happens.
And the evidence of that no longer happening is clear for all to see.
Because there is no streamlined planning. And as a result of that, we also do not have streamlined accountability on matters that relate to the fiscus, but also in terms of human resource management and development.
So that is an indictment on government.
Of course it is. Of course it is. But at the same time, we need to ensure that we get people who are correctly skilled or appropriately skilled for the positions that they hold. And if people are not, then they should be trained. I mean, there are these, we used to have these personal development plans. I don't even think those still appear. I mean, those are still developed. We used to have, linked to the strategic plan of a department, you would have the service delivery improvement plan, which speaks to some of the things that the Auditor General would have picked up, and you would also have a personal development plan for each individual, because issues of substandard performance would have been picked up and training and development would be offered to the individual.
And the question then arises, so every year when the Auditor General releases these reports with this number just going up and up and up at 27 billion currently, and that's not the entire picture. What happens after the AG has presented the report?
Well, what I am going to do now, together with the Minister, because I still have to talk to him, is to go through this with a fine-tooth comb to determine what the problematic areas are. Because, as I say, some of this could be condoned by Parliament. It depends on what the irregularity actually was. But in areas where we would need to take action, whether it is in the way of training, in the way of mentorship, in the way of discipline, that's what we are now going to follow up on.
In the way of attitude, Minister, and it just picked up here in today's Mail and Guardian, Ombuds PA sits pretty in business class. And then it goes on to detail how they questioned why she was on the trip in the first place. Then she's in business class, paid about 71,000 Rand in per diem, in accommodation, another 21,000 Rand in per diem, and getting there, meetings not properly set up or confirmed, and yet you have a whole group of people going on this jaunt that doesn't deliver anything.
Sakina, the fact of the matter is that PAs are not supposed to be traveling business class.
But they evidently are.
Well, PAs, your chief of staffs are not supposed to be traveling in business class. There are very clear directives from the National Treasury on matters relating to that. It started when we started talking about tightening the belt. And it's quite surprising to see things like this. But again, it goes back to the person that is responsible for supervising the individual, but also the person that is responsible for the purse of that particular department. And that is where we should start talking to people.
So given this latest Auditor General report, who is going to take action? and where, how is it going to unfold?
Well, it cascades. First and foremost, I will have to sit with the Minister of Finance to determine a course of action around this. Secondly, engaging with the executing authorities, which are your ministers and also your premiers in provinces. Thirdly, ensuring that the DGs take action. But where it is the DGs that are responsible, the ministers must take action against the DGs for transgressions.
And then, there's so much despondency, Minister. I don't have to tell you about it. You look at the current economic situation in the country, and then you read all of these instances, examples of how money is just blown, literally, just thrown in the wind. And the public wants to know, where is the accountability? There was talk about a school at some point that was going to be run to address some of the problems that you have actually
There is a National School of Government, as I say. And it does offer training. It offers training from induction. Now, if you look at the record of departments on attendance to induction programs by new recruits, it's also dismal.
So that makes the picture even worse.
I could go on training and development and how departments and how provinces and how components of governments and entities really regard the matter of training. So, coming out of this, we are then going to be looking at this together with the ministers responsible to say, these are the training programs that your people need to go through. That has to be compulsory. We've made the induction one compulsory, but if people do not attend, we do not follow up. And this is what we're going to be doing.
Are you in support of giving the Auditor General more teeth so that he could essentially, or the Office of the Auditor General, follow up, in a more meaningful way with especially those who are grossly underperforming?
I'm more in favor of an alignment of functions. Because part of the reason here is that there's no alignment of functions. He does his, or she or he does his job as the Auditor General. Nothing happens from a public service and administration perspective, but also nothing happens from a PFMA implementation perspective. So for me, the most important thing is alignment on the consequences and the measures that would be taken once this has happened. The Auditor General deals with compliance to things that you have said yourself you were going to do. But what about the things that you have not said you were going to do? Those are the things that we should be looking into as ministers, as premiers, as MECs, and also as the two departments that are responsible for the performance of government, which is the DPSA and the National Treasury, with regards to these matters of strategic planning.
And I think we'd appreciate that the reason why this is even a suggestion that the Auditor General's powers be increased or strengthened is because there doesn't seem to be any repercussions. There doesn't seem to be any change in the pattern. If anything, things are escalating. And therefore, it perhaps stems from that sort of frustration.
But I'm not sure if increasing powers is the best option, rather than saying departments responsible must start doing their work and ensuring that they do their work.
Your department would be responsible for holding them accountable.
No, we do hold them accountable. I mean, we hold them accountable in the sense that we develop regulations on consequence management, on training and development, and all such like things that relate to human resource management and development. But at the end of the day, the implementation is with departments.
So the Democratic Alliance, they've also come out and they say they wanted to know from the AG whether this has been reported, what has been going on, and to know who it's been reported to, and again, the action taken. This is a party represented in Parliament, and they seemingly don't know.
It has been reported to Parliament. We all know what the problem is now. And hence I say, Sakina, from here, my department and the Department of Finance now need to meet to determine a course of action. Based on this information that is.
So you think the DA is politicking here?
Well, I don't know. I don't want to get involved.
And then, of course, we're also currently looking at the news that's come out from the Communications Department, about 10 billion rand that has been spent in lieu of digital migration and that process, which has now just been lost. Wiped off because of a change of direction.
Sakina, if there's one thing, I fully agree with the direction that Minister Mokonyane is taking on this matter. Because I'm on record as having said, when I was Minister of Communications, that there's other ways of dealing with this DTT issue. There are other ways other than the set-top box approach, which in any case would be obsolete in no time. So I am in full agreement with the decision that she has taken and in full support of that. But what also needs to happen, Sakina, is that we need a more comprehensive, not a national strategy on digitization, but a public administration or public service approach. A clear strategy on how we're going to approach e-government and all sorts of things. So I think between us and the DTPS, and our responsibility is e-government, it's also information management and information and knowledge management. So we really need to up our game. We're in the process of refining the strategy on ICTs in the public service. So with that, I think we're going to come up with something much better than what we currently have.
What about the 10 billion rand that has now effectively, once again, just been flushed?
Well, it's planning. It's also dilly-dallying in terms of decisions, but also just not having the right people in place to advise appropriately. I mean, I had someone that advised me appropriately on this to say, as long as we're going this route, we're going nowhere very slowly. Minister Mukanyana came in and she just said, this has to stop.
So what must happen now? Because 10 billion rand has been wasted, effectively.
Well, that remains with her. She will see what she does in terms of, I don't think she can recoup 10 billion, but there are certain things that need to happen. People need to be held accountable for the advice that they give to ministers, the advice that ministers take, how they act on information, and how widely we also confer with people that have expert knowledge that we do not have.
Minister, you know, they say the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and it seems for a lot of time government talks a good game, like this will be done, policy direction, this, that and the other, but the actual repercussions for those who are guilty of this wasteful expenditure, who keep, pushing this figure up and up for no good reason, what's going to happen? I mean, when are we going to see the results of your action against some of them?
What is going to happen, Sakina, is that you are going to ask for an interview with Minister Dlodlo and Minister Mboweni to come into the studio here and tell you in December what has happened between now and December with regards to dealing with these issues.
I like that, and certainly we will hold you to it, and hope Minister Mboweni sees this or someone in his office sees it.
I'll call him and tell him.
And please call him so that we can have this conversation, because I think it's a crucial one. 27 billion, nothing to be scoffed at in our economy.
Sure.
So, Minister, thanks so much for stopping by.
You're most welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
And that was Ayanda Dlodlo, and she is Public Service and Administration Minister. And of course, this also relates to our question of the day that we're asking. It speaks to, wasteful expenditure, the 10 billion rand. What's your take on that at Morning Live SABC? Well, we're going to take a break right now.